This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a real privilege to be with you today. We've got yet another awesome guest on the show for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about how to be more energy efficient, how to reduce waste, and how to have more of a sustainable business in a time in our world where this matters more than anything else, it seems. Today, we get the privilege of having a CEO of an energy company that's going to share with us some really cool things they're doing and how to kind of help change your perspective, change how we do business in the world to make it a greener, safer, better place for everybody that comes after us. So today it's my privilege to introduce to you Heather Johnson. Heather is the CEO of a company called Ingenium, which is a waste management company. She has over 25 years of experience helping organizations be more sustainable and earth-friendly. She's one of the top experts in her field, is a keynote speaker on this subject, and serves on numerous boards for nonprofits and biosafety organizations represented around the globe. Without further ado, Heather, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me here today. I'm excited.
Well, we are excited to have you.
Yeah.
We are excited to have you. You know, this world we live in is changing rapidly every day. Um, and the pace for which we are changing requires us to think differently. One of the things that I think we really need to be focused on going forward is how do we do things leaner? How do we do things greener? Be more responsible in our daily activities, not only in our personal lives, but definitely in our businesses. And so tell us a little bit about your background. How did you even get started in this? And how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think your listeners may be surprised to learn that I didn't plan to go this route. Actually, no, probably most people would be surprised to know that. I actually started by answering phones for a company in the hazardous waste industry, and while I was going to college. So I was in school to get a degree in accounting, needed some extra money, got a job, and it was answering phones for hazardous waste disposal. Somewhere along the way, I decided I liked it. And instead of becoming an accountant, I did finish my degree, but never chose to do accounting. I've been in hazardous waste now for over 25 years.
So what about it drew you in? Like you're answering the phones, you're doing, a lot of administrative stuff to kind of start your career. And all of a sudden, like, boom, you woke up one day and you're like, I'm going to be the trash lady. I'm going to be the environmental friendly lady. Like what clicked? What happened to make you really like this industry?
A couple of things, actually. The first thing that happened was while I was answering phones, I had an opportunity to build a marketing campaign. And it was the most basic of marketing campaigns because I didn't really know much about anything. And also, this was back in the days when Word was widely used to create flyers. It's a long story, but nonetheless, I got the opportunity to expand and learn the business a little bit more because I put together a campaign. And through that campaign, a competitor heard about me and wanted to bring me onto his team to do something similar for his company. And so I was a senior in my final semester of college when I was asked to go to work for this competitor and do more of the same. From there, he said, I want you to move into sales. And that was both scary and intriguing to me. But from there, my career really took off where I never looked back as far as liking the industry, learning a lot, and being able to educate other people.
Well, that's pretty cool. So they must have saw something in you, the marketing and sales side of things, especially coming out of school, can be kind of daunting. Were you a natural talker, salesperson, or did you grow into that role? What did they see in you that led you to down that path?
I think they saw um, ability in me. I saw scary because when I was growing up, salespeople were not good people in my household. My parents viewed them as people, the last kind of person they want me to be. So I thought I would never be in sales. I didn't really know anything about it, but I had the ability to try it out, I guess, if you will. And business to business is, I think, a lot different than going door to door selling vacuums or
Right,
insurance policies or encyclopedias at, during people's dinner
right,
time, right?
right.
Yeah,
Never fails.
never fails.
Well, that's awesome. Well, so how did you progress? You went from marketing and sales and now you run this really cool company. How did you grow up through the ranks and when did you take over and what was that journey like for you?
I was in sales for many, many years. In fact, I'm still selling. I think we all are on some level in business.
Never stop.
Never stop. And so getting to learn the sales side of the business first actually was hugely beneficial, because I have to know what I'm selling, and then from there learn the inner workings of the business. So it was somewhat of a natural progression. I also had the opportunity to start my own business with some folks, and it was through that learning that I moved into leading the company overall.
Okay. So you didn't stay with the other company you originally started with or the company that took you from the other company. You didn't stay and grow up with them. You kind of broke off on your own with some other folks and created your own company?
Correct. The same person who hired me to start a campaign for the company he worked for, he and I and a few other folks broke off and started a new company. And then
Oh
that
my
moved
goodness.
into its
So
own new company through some challenges with having six people trying to own and operate a business. We reduced it to five. And here we are, 17 years later, still together at Ingenium.
oh my gosh. So what was that journey like? New never been a business owner before, trying to figure out entrepreneurism, sell stuff. I mean, was that chaotic? Was that scary? Was that were you fully confident with that? Like what was that like for you?
You're reminding me I have some PTSD associated with it. Because I was the sales side of the business for all intents and purposes, was the one that was expected to dial for dollars and generate business so we could start having some income. And my partners were the operations piece. So they would fulfill the orders,
Okay.
if you will. So it's very stressful when I've got, partners, including myself, needing to feed ourselves and our families, and we start this business with no income. I think
Wow.
because I had relationships through my previous job and company, a lot of people moved over with me to Ingenium. So we got started probably a little bit more quickly than we might have otherwise. It still took several months for these companies to get purchase orders in place, contracts, and all the
Mm.
administrative piece worked out before we could start doing business. So to answer your question, it was
Yeah.
stressful in the beginning, but also really exciting as you're building business. And you ask about my career and progression along the way. As we built up, now I'm not so much the doer as opposed to I need to hire more people to help do things. And then that moved me into more of a management role. And I had not
Yeah.
previously been on the management side of things, which is so different from being responsible for yourself. And we could talk about
That's
this all
right.
day long, the progression of business in terms of the bigger you get, the more jobs and responsibilities and everything else. Different challenges present themselves as business
Yep.
changes.
Yeah, business growth is like having kids. Once they're born, you got to keep feeding them, right? They keep wanting things, they keep growing, they keep wanting more stuff, and it's a beast that you have to feed for your whole time in it, and the demands of it continue to increase as it grows with it, right?
Absolutely.
It's a so what do you think were some of the keys to your success and kind of powering through those first couple of years and taking off as a new business owner and really kind of hitting on a level that you felt was really going to be sustainable for you guys?
I think a lot of it is my own personal drive and motivation. And, even as the company has grown, staying completely involved, not taking, my eyes off, what's in front of me and continuing to be heavily involved early on and today because things change. And I think if you back out, you're not aware as much of what's going on to stay in that growth mode and successful. So my success, I think, is tied directly to staying involved, staying current, what's going on in the markets, and what does the business need to do to sustain itself.
Nice. Love it. All right. Well, let's talk about the business. What is Ingenium? Like, what all do you guys do? What is your definition of waste and eco-friendly? And yeah, break that down. Tell us, what you do and how you do it.
Okay. Well, it's kind of two things. Ingenium at its core, we're a logistics company. We drive trucks and we run routes to pick up hazardous waste. We market ourselves as a hazardous waste transportation and management company. So,
Okay.
we're focused on moving hazardous waste from point A to point B. In that, we look at what can we do with waste differently today than traditionally has been done. So we market ourselves as a sustainable company looking for more sustainable solutions to manage hazardous waste. And so we're always looking for better technology and ways to either reduce and minimize what goes out as hazardous waste or treat it in a greener fashion.
Okay. So when you talk about hazardous waste, what are we talking about here? What are some examples of hazardous waste you guys normally deal with?
Great question. I think most people who aren't generating hazardous waste don't think about waste and therefore have no idea what is waste. So we work largely with manufacturing companies, research and development, pharmaceutical, the education system, like chemistry labs, where they're using a lot of different
Okay.
chemicals in chemistry. And all of these things that people are working with that are toxic or otherwise can't be thrown into the trash are what we take away for disposal. If you look at it from an individual consumer, and where I think people might be able to relate a little bit better, is when you look at your own household and what types of things you're using at home, either in the house or in your garage. Paints, aerosols containing pesticides or paints, even batteries. Batteries are regulated and
Mm,
have to be managed specially. So anything that cannot go into the trash at your curbside, not stuff that you have to put in your recycle bin, but just your general waste. Most of it is special waste and has to be handled as regulated and hazardous waste.
wow. So, are there special places where you guys take and how they dispose of that kind of stuff? And you're just shipping it there? Do you do the disposal or you're just doing the transportation from the place that's producing the waste to the place that's going to dispose of the waste?
That's exactly right. So we
Okay.
manage the transaction from point A to point B, and we transport the waste to the disposal company. We don't own any technology, and that actually affords us the ability to work with each generator individually and say, what are your goals and objectives? What are you trying to accomplish here? These days, most people are looking for recycling as an option, waste reduction as an option, and more sustainable technology for things that ultimately have to be disposed of. So that's what we do. We move it from point A to point B, but because we don't own the technology, we're afforded the ability to offer many options. If we were an incinerator, for example,
Hmm.
we would be focused on putting waste in our incinerator, running our incinerator for our business. Or if we were a hazardous waste landfill, we would be focused on moving everything into our landfill. This way, we get to work with each customer individually and talk about what they want to accomplish, and then leverage our network of all kinds of things to provide them the best solution for their needs.
Yeah. Now it's a fascinating industry because a lot of people don't want to talk about trash and waste and hazardous stuff, and they just want to use what they want to use and throw it out the door to somebody and just kind of keep doing what they're doing, right? What are some of the trends that you're seeing out there of that's hazardous that are opportunities for us to do better?
I think I think generally speaking, there's a lot of opportunity. Hazardous waste aside, just think about the number of plastic water bottles people are drinking out of. And to your
Mm,
point, we want to do what we want to do and have it go away and not, bother us. And I think about that with water, and we have the ability to use these Yeti or any brand. We don't need to name drop here, but any kind of
yeah.
water bottle that you can continue to refill and drink out of, yet we still are consuming millions of bottles of water in plastic all the time because we resist using this reusable thing. I don't know, but in the hazardous waste space, a trend that I'm seeing, and maybe it's in business as a whole, not so much in the consumption of things, but it's in the mindset of people entering the workforce. So the younger generation, they're coming into business and they have an expectation that a business is mindful of the environment, and they're looking at what decisions we're making as businesses when they decide who they want to work for. And I think that's interesting to note because we position ourselves as a sustainability company and we're looking to provide more sustainable options for other companies. It's becoming more and more important to consider sustainability in business, all business.
Are you seeing a trend of organizations out there becoming more aware of that and making that more of a priority? I mean, it's certainly generationally speaking, people wise, yes, the Gen Zs and the millennials are very, eco-friendly and want to be part of things that are going to be doing good. They want to make an impact. They just have a different mindset about things. And maybe it's just how they grew up and the world they live in. Um, are but how do you see the industry shifting, or do you?
I do. And I actually see two different things happening. One is the mindset of leaders in many organizations has shifted from the cheapest disposal option for waste, which historically has been putting waste in a landfill, to being mindful
Mm.
of the environment for different reasons, and getting a lot of pressure to reduce or recycle waste. All types of waste, and hazardous waste is included in that. I think it's been about 15 years now, but when we first started promoting sustainability for waste was when the mortgage industry crashed in 2008, when we had a lot of economic turmoil. Businesses were going out of business, and in research labs there was a lot of chemicals that were going out for disposal, brand new, never been opened, and they made us a lot of money.
Mm.
But it was also kind of you don't want to see the amount of waste that's just being wasted for no reason other than this business went out of business. So we started
Wow.
promoting a program where, in the event somebody has to go under, instead of just wasting, and that would be burning most of these things, can we find another home for them? So, is there some other business that's thriving that can benefit from taking on this list of chemicals and using them in their research, as an example? And at the time, trying to promote that, while if we took it for free, yes, anybody's down. But if it's going to have a cost that's greater than putting it in the landfill, there wasn't a lot of openness to doing that. Fast forward to today, people are paying more to do better for the environment. And so
Wow.
I think we were on the front end of this trend in the hazardous waste space. And we've spent, time all along the way continuing to innovate in that way. And it's being well received and paid for at a higher cost. So that's important to note.
Wow. That is interesting. Um, Man, that's pretty fascinating to really think about that, which is, I guess, a good thing. And what a great idea, like if let's say an elderly lady isn't able to take care of her dog, instead of taking it to the shelter, you have an adoption program and give it a new home, where folks may be able to take care of it better. So it's like hazardous waste adoption program or something. Like who wants our waste? It's like
You'll like the name then. We called it Orphan Chemical. It's called our Orphan Chemical
oh,
program.
nice. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's classic. I love it. That's like a great name for it, especially from a marketing perspective. So there you go, using your fancy Word
Yeah.
documents. That comes in handy now, right?
I have fancy marketing people now too. They're much
Nice.
better in that space
Very
than I
nice.
am.
Where do you see this industry going? Like where are you taking your company? Where do you see the needs going forward? And you having to adapt to those things.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out is regulation is becoming more stringent. So on top of the fact that I think our industry is strong, it's just almost every day something new is being regulated that wasn't regulated yesterday. So for me, I think we are recession proof, if you will, in terms of
Yeah.
business, because there's no shortage of things that have to be specially managed, can't go into the trash, and somebody like Ingenium needs to be brought in to help, manage the situation.
So a little more consulting basis where you working with certain types of companies with these types of chemicals and hazardous materials that you can kind of guide them and direct them and kind of help them create these sustainable. Do a lot of companies have good sustainable programs? Do they have like dedicated people working these things that are working with folks like you and other companies to follow the rules, be compliant, do all these things? Or is it kind of, pun intended, haphazard?
It's generally tied to the size of the business. The larger
Yeah.
a company is, the more sophisticated they are, and they have people in positions to manage waste and all the regulations around their environmental health and safety programs as a whole. Smaller companies, startups, and those that are, in their growth phase early on, they don't necessarily have somebody dedicated to hazardous waste and overall environmental health and safety compliance. So they need help. They need consulting, and they don't know what they don't know. So without
Mm,
having somebody come in, they're wearing multiple hats, like any startup, you have multiple things you have to focus on, and keeping up with regulation is challenging in general. And then depending on the state that you operate in, some states are much stricter than others as it pertains to all the things you have to be aware of, both in terms of the waste itself and training people to handle it. So if you are generating hazardous waste, you're required for anybody who touches it to understand what they're working with and train them, and then show proof of training, and the list goes on of everything that is involved with this. So for someone like Ingenium to come in and help you understand, okay, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What do you want to accomplish here? We can help with all of those things for the
wow.
customer. Yeah.
Yeah, because I would imagine that your folks that work for you are highly trained, highly specialized. Gone through some very specific, OSHA, whatever official programs, certifications, and really have to have some pretty important credentials there. Not only just the handling of it, but even like the shipping of those things. You hear on the news sometimes a train overturns near this town and it's got, some kind of hydraulic acid or something on it that's, had to evacuate the town, or some semi overturns. Like there's all these kind of weird scenarios in this crazy world that you've got to be prepared for. You need to know what to do if something, weird were to happen. We're coming up into the cold months and icier roads. And, you see a couple years ago, I saw a pile up. I can't remember where it was. I think Northeast somewhere, and there was this big pile up and semi rigs, and there was some hazardous stuff that leaked out. And like, do you guys have teams of people that go out and deal with that if something happens, or no?
Not so much Ingenium. We don't get into emergency response. That's usually an emergency that you have teams on
Okay.
standby. We're more waste that's being collected in 55-gallon drums, and when people fill their drums, we have a route and we go through and we collect them. If they have a small spill in the lab, we can help clean that up. But a big spill on the highway, there's companies designated for that type of work.
You guys have partners you refer
Exactly.
to and connect all that stuff up and try to solve the situation. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, what are some of the things, if I'm an owner of a business or a CEO of a business that works in some of the hazard with some of the hazardous materials out there, what are some things that you would advise me on in how to be more eco-friendly, or some things that I could do to maybe reduce my waste footprint or be more efficient or things like that?
The first thing I advise is look at what you're using and understand why. So a lot of people are using some toxic materials in the front end of their processes, and they can replace those with more eco-friendly. In some instances they can't, but it really starts upstream in the process of, what are you doing and what are you using to do it? And then do you have to use that, or is there something better you can do? And then along the way in your process, are you introducing other chemicals and contaminating the first one you started with? The reason I bring that
Mm,
up is if they're using a single product and it comes out relatively clean, we have the ability to reuse it, whether they can reuse it, whether we can clean it up and they can reuse it, or whether someone else can use it just as it is because it's okay the way it is. All of these things are part of the consideration for what they're doing and how they can be better. So if they aren't contaminating it, then looking for people downstream who can use it again, and that's where we do this. It's called beneficial reuse, and we're repurposing a chemical before it becomes a waste. Once it becomes a waste, then you're bound by all this regulation, how you have to manage it, and all the training
mm.
and everything surrounding it. But until it's a waste, it's a chemical, which has a different set of regulations and all costs and everything else. So it's a conversation. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Do you have to do it this way? What else can you do? And then what's the result?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody wants to live in a world where it's clean and it's healthy, and the air we breathe is not contaminated. And I spent many years in the military, and there are some military bases out there. Camp Lejeune's one of them. Even though I wasn't stationed there, I was in the Air Force. Obviously, that's a Marine Corps base, but like Camp Lejeune is like probably one of the more famous ones where they had for a number of years. I think it was like from the 50s to like the 70s, early 80s. I don't know if I'm assuming it was unknowingly had contamination. They had chemicals and hazardous materials, petroleums that had somehow breached out of their containers and had seeped into the soil and the aquifer, and people would drink it. A lot of people have died, gotten cancer. It's horrific. Um, when you think about those kinds of things, are there things that people can do to like maybe store things above ground? Are there things they can do differently along those lines to keep it from minimizing the risk of it getting into some of the, things, areas where we can get hurt?
It's the example you just described and many more like it that drive regulation, whereby
Yeah.
things things become a certain way. You actually can't do it this way because we've learned that they leak and they leach into the groundwater, and now you have to do it this way. And so a lot of that is driven by regulation. When we learn over time what we're doing is problematic. So I would say today that would never happen, what you saw happen at Camp Lejeune, because we just know more today than we knew then. We didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
Now we know. And so we cannot repeat that behavior, because if nothing else, we're being governed differently. And if you do, you're going to be fined heavily and whatnot. And another thing is, when you're working with a hazardous waste transporter or disposal company, it's important to understand and ensure that the company is legitimate and following all the regulation. Because if you are working with a company that isn't, properly certified, it's the wrong choice of words, but have everything in place to legally move hazardous waste, there's been instances where companies will take your money, drop your waste into ditches or storage sheds or any number of
Wow.
places. And then that becomes a cleanup site once the government gets a hold of it. And now you're being brought in as the business because your name is on a label, for example. So the government says, oh, this is XYZ company's waste. Now you're paying for it a second time. And the more
Wow.
contamination that results from it, the bigger the cleanup effort and the more costly it is. So while you might be doing things right on the front end, if you're not sending it out to a registered hauler and disposal facility, you could still have a problem in the
Well,
future.
you bring up a really, really good point. If I'm a business leader and I'm in this space, how do I know I'm working with the right people? Is there things you need to be looking for? Is there some kind of accreditation or, I'm assuming it's bigger than the Better Business Bureau's stamp of approval that they give you when you're in business, right? Is it like what types of things do they need to be looking for and getting proof of to make sure they're dealing with a legitimate group?
I would say for sure insurance. How much insurance is the company carrying? Also, although I would never have wanted to admit this 17 years ago, how long has the company been in business?
Hmm.
Are they credible in terms of who are their customers, who's choosing to do business with them, and then even following up with those people to say, hey, what has your experience been with this company? And then all the regulatory stuff that I won't bore you and your listeners with, but understanding what a company needs to be doing to ensure they're doing the right thing, and asking those customers that are referrals, what are they doing all of these things? Are you getting your paperwork back timely? Are they reporting to the EPA, et cetera, et cetera? So you can ensure that this company legitimately is doing what they need to be doing. Also asking for their regulatory plans and things that we have to do as a business to be legitimate, asking to see that stuff and ensure that we're doing what we need to be doing.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's really good information. Because I would that would keep me up at night if I was in that line of work and I decided to do business with you because you were the cheapest bidder, and then all my stuff gets on the 6 o'clock news, and yeah, just the reputation alone could be a killer, right? Oh, X company found disposing of their waste in the Mississippi River or something like that. And you're like, oh my God, what is this? And it was not even you, but the reputation that people hear on the news, just name association. Oh my gosh, that would be horrific. Let me ask you about a particular term. I was, reading some things about your company, and there was something you described as zero waste certification. Like, what is that? What's the benefit of that? How do you get that? That sounds important.
It is important, and that's one of the newer things Ingenium is focused on, because as people have become more conscious about the environment and everything that we're disposing of, not just hazardous waste, there's a certification. It's landfill reduction is a large part of it. Everything goes into
Okay.
the landfill, from your waste receptacle at your desk to your trash in your kitchen, all over the offices, waste, waste, waste. And so the objective is to look at what is going into the trash. What a lot of businesses have no idea what their people are throwing in the trash. So our zero waste certification starts with, we call it a dumpster dive. And literally we get into the dumpster and we see what are people throwing in the trash. It's fascinating. But from there, we can show data to the leadership. Hey, here's what we found. You have, 50% plastic bottles, you have, 20% cardboard, you have food waste, whatever's going into this trash. And that's the benchmark, the baseline. And these leaders, they often have no clue what's going into the trash. What's promising is so much of it can go in a different direction instead of the landfill. So we start with data, providing data, and then we say, okay, what's your motivation to improve this, reduce what's going into your trash? And then it requires all hands on deck with a plan in a company, and then time, because you have to track and measure over time your progress. But ultimately, getting down to, I believe it's 90% reduction, then you get this certification. And today it's really important for businesses to show, because again, you have people looking for companies to demonstrate that they're more sustainable. What are they doing? And our zero waste platform provides them with something concrete they can show and demonstrate what they're doing.
Wow. That sounds really, really cool and important. I mean, because one, I think in many instances, the government does incentivize companies to go through these kind of programs and to, get rebates and things like that. I remember, my dad had a construction company. Growing up, I'd work with him, and I remember having conversations with the homeowners that were, he was working with on the remodels or brand new home builds. And like, you get certain energy efficient roofing materials and windows and doors and, all of, and there were rebates on all this stuff, and I know the same is true for companies, but I think equally, if not more importantly, this is something that you put up on the wall of the business or on your website saying you're an eco certified compliant company, because like you said, the workforce of the future wants to make, they don't want to go to work for a company that's going to potentially do dangerous stuff or potentially be in a negative light in the news. I mean, who wants to be a part of a bad news story? They want to be part of a good news story of doing something good, better, more eco-friendly, saving the planet and growing more trees and just doing positive things in the world. When I see this, the millennial and the Gen Z generation, majority of them want to make an impact. You think about the impact of COVID and the Great Resignation and a lot of the turmoil that we've experienced over the past couple of years. It's really about the younger generation wanting to feel like they're doing something bigger than just pushing paper in an office or doing their daily quote unquote job. They're really truly making an impact. They wanna make an impact, and I think this is a wonderful way you are enabling people to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that is I just can't, thank you enough for all your great work and your leadership and your determination. I mean, you are definitely a leading pioneer in this space. And that just takes a lot of courage and dedication. So good on you and your people and all the great work you're doing to keep us safe and to give us a healthy planet to continue to enjoy for generations to come. As we kind of come to an end of today's podcast, what are the top two or three things you'd like for people to know the most, and what are the top three things you wanted to take away?
I think if you're unsure of what options are available to you, seek out a company like Ingenium and inquire. Have your goals set out in front of you and say, what else? I think you mentioned early on, think differently. We need to think differently. And more and more, we're doing that naturally, but a lot of times we are stuck in our ways. And this is the way it's always been. And this is just how it's going to be. Drop that mentality and say, what else? What else can we do? Because there's a lot today. that didn't exist even 10 years ago, and 20 and 30 years ago, you betcha it's a lot different. So I think that's probably the biggest thing to take away from this. Also, from a leadership standpoint, just you don't know what you don't know. Keep on growing, keep on taking on opportunities, and um, yeah, I think the world has endless potential.
I love it. The world is a huge place, and there's a lot more needs in the world than we have people and resources. So there's always a need. Always be looking for the need, whether you're taking your company out on the side of the road and then adopting a highway and picking up trash, or you're going through programs like Heather talked about today to make your company more eco-friendly and even just minimize the amount of hazardous waste and materials you may be producing knowingly or unknowingly. There's many things you can do, and I encourage you to continue to do that as well. Heather, again, thank you for being on the show. I know people are going to have questions. I know they're going to want to seek you out and ask, to connect with you and learn more. How do people do that? What's the best way to reach you?
Sure, thank you, and thank you for having me on this platform to educate and share all of my knowledge and experience so that others can have more information. They can find me for more at www.pureingenium. That's PUREingenium.com/podcast. This recording will be there as well, and all my contact information, as well as information about Ingenium, the services we provide, and the opportunities available.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're going to always, as we always do, we're going to put all of that great information in the show notes of the podcast so it can permanently be there and people can scroll through that and copy and paste, put it in their phones or computers and find you with ease. Real privilege to have you on the show. You're an amazing pioneer and young lady that's just doing amazing work. Thank you for that. That's it for today's show. What an amazing show. We hope you enjoy it. And as we come into the holiday season, we hope you have safe travels and a wonderful time with your families. And we look forward to talking to you next week on the next Soar Higher podcast. Have a great week, everybody.